Vampires is open source. Um, or it's not open source. What's the term I'm looking for? It's free.
I like you said open source, and now my brain is dead.
Yeah, it's
Is
like
free real
werewolf.
estate?
It's free real estate. Welcome to the Castles of Runeterra, episode 65. I'm your host, Ryan, here with your other host, Hedge.
What's up, everyone? I had nothing to do with this intro and how we came in hot.
We're late, but we're back. All right, we're getting some scheduled stuff aligned. We're working through it. We'll get back to spewing out content. But thanks for bearing with us. We finally got something. You know, we come bearing gifts. Obviously, we have what is it? Soot in our face? No, we have egg on our face. So we were like, well, let's dip into our charity jar and pull out some Noxus content.
That's right. That's right. We're doing this purely out of the love that we have for our Noxus fans, and not for getting goodwill points for being late on recording.
Yeah. One thing, we won't, take it easy on those housekeeping. It's up top. It's at the beginning.
Smooth.
It has to be done. You can listen to us everywhere. You know that. Visit us at podcastcore.com for all the links. And then follow us on any platform you prefer, or follow us on all the platforms, because that helps us, right? Get some visibility there. And then you can send an email if you want to contact us at podcastcore@gmail.com. Leave a like, follow, short review / comment. We love to hear your thoughts. The comments are always great and appreciated. We love reading and sharing them with each other. But the easiest way is to tell one friend to learn to bloodbend by listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast. So, I know bloodbending isn't real. So, could we get in trouble?
Well, actually, in the Avatar, The Last Airbender, Katara learns... Okay, I'm over it.
Oh, man. We're at main topic, bloody bonds. We're talking about Vladimir. Long overdue. Long overdue. Vladimir is one of those stories which both of us really like. It's a really unique take on, vampires, blood bending. Obviously, we gave that one away. Blood magic, any fantasy thing, you've seen it done a bunch of different ways. And it's one of those tried and true and open source content. Vampires is open source. Or it's not open source. What's the term I'm looking for? It's free.
I like you said open source, and now my brain is dead.
Yeah, it's like
free real estate.
It's free real estate. Yes, it's free real estate. That's actually what we'll go with. So you see a bunch of different takes on it, and they kind of follow a certain amount of rules, right? And I think League did their take very well. I think it fits very well into their universe, and we're going to tell you why. But first, we start with this spell. So Vladimir is in Legends of Runeterra, so we're going to look at some spells here that kind of fit really well with the themes of his bio. And we're going to start with Transfusion. So this one is an OG card, been in the game from day one, and it's great. Has a lot of uses, has kind of seen its place among different metas. It's a 2-cost burst spell that says deal 1 to an ally to give another ally +2/+2 this round. That's bloodbending, baby. But for us, the quote here's what matters most. It's give and take, my dear. You give and I take. And this is a good start to kind of show you Vladimir's character. He's going to be a narcissist. He's going to be very self-centered. And he's going to center himself a lot throughout the story, unnecessarily, to the point of boredom, I think is what this boils down to.
Unnecessarily is definitely key, and especially when we get into the the forming of a group. One of the rules of that group is to not do what Vladimir does. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, here's one of our leaders. Don't be like him. All right, and but transfusion is like uh, it's one of the OG like just combat tricks, like other than might for Noxus. And this is one of those combat tricks that like it's always been fringe as far as in the meta. It never truly has a home, but a lot of Noxus decks can usually end up slotting it just because of the fact that it gives +2/+2, whereas all the other Noxus combat tricks you're only ever looking at attack. Um, so I've seen a lot of decks usually kind of either splash one or two of this card. It's one that I think a lot of people sleep on, but it's not really with bad reason that it's slept on.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Good point. Good point. And then we go to our follower here, which has a little mysteriousness to it.
I love this card. I love this card.
Otacon, Bringer of Ruin. So this came out later. This came out with Empires of Ascension, which was the Shurima pack that came out. And this is a 10 cost card. It's a power card, but it's meant to give flavor. It's meant to introduce a character into the story. And he's a 10 cost 5/12 with Overwhelm, and on attack, increase my power by the total power of all my allies. Now, the card is not great, and it's not played, but its ability, it's very rooted in kind of the lore aspect, right? Taking from the worshippers to empower yourself, which is what we're going to talk about that we think is, I might get this wrong, is it the Darkin?
Yeah, it's.
I think it's the Darkins.
It's the Darkin.
I believe. You can fact check me on that. But
yeah,
the Darkins in the story are essentially, and we'll get to it.
It is Darkin.
Darkin.
You were
Yeah.
correct.
The Darkins are the species or creatures that are the ones that kind of develop this blood bending technique that we know from Vladimir. And he gets taught it by them. But we're never seen them up to this point until Runeterra, Legends of Runeterra came out. We really didn't have any more information. There are some stories, and we'll get into the stories in different episodes. But as far as we know for this episode, what is a Darkin? Is this one? Because we do have these things worshiping this godlike creature. It has multiple arms. We do see blood involved. But we do also have some text here on the card, which says, a nameless aberration towered above them in the smoke-filled chamber. The mages chanted in discordant chorus, dread their voices reaching. Wait, why is it written like this?
It's ancient lore. We don't speak the language that way anymore.
I know, right? Okay. The mages chanted in discordant choruses, dread their voices reaching a strained fever pitch. It's a weird sentence. The monster breathed deep of their mounting fear, and each breath brought it terrible power. Yeah, he's feeding on them, and they're willingly giving it up. So there's consent there, which is great. We love that here at the Castles of Runeterra.
Yeah, we're all about consent.
How do you feel about Otacon?
I love this card. The bottom line that I think, like, this is one positive of this card. It's indisputable. No one can argue me. This card gets a dumpy seal of approval for the Casuals of Runeterra because it's a bloody 5/12. Like, come on, this thing is got the biggest of booties.
Yeah, 4 arms, 4 cheeks.
That's right. I will say that as far as like a lot of the like more control style decks that are running like Shadow Isles that have a lot of like sacrifice mechanics, like the Reanimator. No, not the Reanimator. It's the 5-drop. But the ones that like spawn random units.
Yeah.
Like getting this to spawn randomly, you're never going to be upset about seeing it.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's a 10-drop. No one but me plays this card. I actually have this card run in my Vladimir deck. No, that's not even a joke.
That's
but it is, one, because of the lore flavor, and two, you swing this with Vladimir, it's pretty nasty.
Yeah.
But I never survived to 10 mana anyways.
If anything.
It's win more, 100%. But I love this card.
If Runeterra had Challenger, This card would be played in Challenger decks,
This guy
essentially.
would be played in 100%.
So let's get into it. Let's start talking about Vladimir, because this is a
That's
fun
right.
one.
Yeah, and not only is this a fun one just because like Vladimir's story itself is fun, but it's beyond important because of the fact that we're going to be looking at the beginning of Noxus in a way. If we get to a point in the show where we talk more about a character like Mordekaiser, we'll be able to break down the beginning of Noxus better. But this is a story that starts before the Noxus Empire has formed. Like we're going to like timeline wise the beginning of Shurima
Yeah.
in essence. So that part is already kind of cool. Um, and then Vladimir is a fun story because Vladimir's insane. All right,
Yes.
like not even a spoiler. He's just crazy.
Yeah.
The guy's not right. Okay, so let's get into it. So we're going to be looking at Vladimir. Essentially, has existed since the beginning of time, like just by most people's ideas, but it's really like back in a very like few thousand years before the forming of Noxus.
Yeah.
And Vladimir has always been a part of that, but not necessarily as who we know Vladimir as. He's just there starting off as a powerful wizard.
Yep.
And with his beginning, he has watched a lot of war. The position that Noxus is in on the map of Valoron, so or like Runeterra as a whole, it's in a very contested spot because it's a centralized location in the main continent.
Mm-hmm.
So all these tribes start up, they all hate each other, they're always going to war, and Vladimir finds a way, along with a bunch of other powerful wizards, to take these energies off of these constant conflicts and channel it into their magic. And it's really these strong wizards channeling within their own magic the rage and the violence and the pain that become the Darkin.
Yeah.
Right? And the Darkin, like you brought up earlier, it's this evil cabal essentially that has just been there for a very long time and is worshipped.
Yeah, I think
So
I would say something we can pull from is the concept of like goblins and orcs in a lot of fantasy where they're inherently evil. They don't really have agency to them. They just are a different race that
yeah,
manifest that pure, almost like a hunter style, or sorry, a predator style of life. Like there is no concept to what they do. They do it because that's what they are.
yeah, and that's a perfect comparison because a lot of goblins and orcs in different lores, it's not necessarily that they themselves are evil. It's just that their nature is so different from our
Yep.
nature that we recognize it as evil, and they lean more towards evil with our nature because it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm here for a fight.
And this is a concept in general that when written, especially when you're dealing with vampire type stuff, if done well, can be a really big element. And we'll see that here as we go through.
Yeah, and so now Vladimir, as far as his position before he's becoming a part of this Darkin, is that he was born as the son of a leader to one of these tribes. The tribe trying to fight for its own survival, his father ends up trading him away as a hostage into another group. It is within this time that he is learning more about his magic, and what he ends up doing is finding a way to, with the trade off to this different group, this other group is a lot of like using violence within their rituals. So he's able to combine his understanding from his past group with this understanding of the Darkin that this group is following to transition his magic. Direct quote, the art of crafting flesh and transmuting blood, granting them mastery over life itself. And that is where we get our bloodbending idea. Like, if that's not a definition of bloodbending, what is that?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. It's one of those things where you think of, at the root of a vampire is the concept of siphoning life, right? So you can do that in a million different ways, and they choose to do it this way because this does fit really well with um, the forbidden paths of knowledge that we get throughout Runeterra, right? There's plenty of people that do things they shouldn't be doing, tinker with things they shouldn't be tinkering with, to end up with this godly like power. So this fits really well for Runeterra. So I'm happy they went this route with it because it's not completely original, but it does fit really well.
And it gives it a nice twist as far as just, playing into this vampire idea.
Yes.
It's like, instead of just having vampires in our world, what would a vampire in our world look
Boom.
like?
You nailed it.
And of course, as far as once Vladimir gets this ability, as far as like really learning how to control life itself, like any sane person, he immediately goes up. I am better than all mortals. All of you are beneath me. And he's now positioned himself to become one of the Darkin. And this idea of like blood magic is really powerful in a world where every single tribe is against each other. The blood never stops flowing. So, of course, someone who is actively using blood as a weapon, yeah, this is a good place to be. So Vladimir is able to grow into power very, very, very quickly. He is not a prisoner for long. This political, like hostage setup, it's almost not worth mentioning because of how quickly he rises to power because of his control of blood magic.
Yeah, this is another concept which fits really well because we know this from like Norths, right? With Ares, where he thrives on war. Like war has to happen for him to have power. It's the same concept here where the resource, if it's flowing constantly, it's like oil, baby. There's blood everywhere. I can constantly practice and grow. The unique thing here that you usually don't get in like vampire stories is like with vampires, they tend to become more cruel over time because of their disconnect from humanity as they continue to live on. That's a common one. Well, here, Vladimir's just twisted from the get-go, and then you add a little bit of jadedness from his dad just giving him up, and you're like, okay, that's enough spice to put him over the edge. So it makes him even, an exponentially more cruel person as time goes on and we get into that part.
Yep. The only correction I have there is Ares as Norse mythology.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
You Philistine! You Philistine! That's Greek!
I'm sorry!
My God!
Forgive me, Talos. Forgive me.
So yeah, Vladimir's rise to power. Another direct quote is that this is all written in the dead High Shuriman language.
Yeah.
So this is we're talking like before Azir is ascended time. All right, long time ago. And now we're gonna get into the fact of like how is Vladimir, because Vladimir again is just a man with the control of magic. So how is he starting off here and still in the conversation as far as a champion in Runeterra? Let's find out. So, unknown to all of people is as far as like the fall of the Darkin is that Vladimir, he is the one that killed the Darkin that is in control of the war host of his region. All right? So in this time, basically way before recorded Runeterra history, Vladimir is rising to the power of a god. He is killing the god of his people, and then just quietly being like, yeah, it's me now. I'm your god.
Yep.
All right? Now, the Darkin, though, they're all just powerful mages. So, Vladimir strikes down this Darkin, and with that Darkin's life force, he is able to revamp his own understanding of magic with such power and such just pure vitality that he discovers a new way to imbue this life force within another body to thus give that body a whole rejuvenating effect. All right, so he basically discovers a spell at the expense of a powerful being's life to grant a user more life. And thus we have the birth of Vladimir as the vampire, quote unquote, that we know and love of in Runeterra. But we're not even caught up to basic history yet. We're not at the current timeline of Runeterra. So long, long ago, Vladimir discovers how to give himself life, and he decides to do this as far as just with anything that he can get his hands on. And as with a direct quote here, with a ritual so vile that it cannot be written. So
not even in an old dead language. So it's like we won't even write this shit down in Latin. It's so gruesome.
I'm gonna write it down in Latin. No one's gonna know about it.
It's like most people get 401ks and they invest in that over time. Vladimir, he was like, no. I'm going to get my return on investment.
Oh my God. I got that O negative. Okay. Here's my retirement plan. Never retire. He'd make a great American.
A good red-blooded American. Hell yeah, brother. Patriot.
Hell yeah, brother. Oh my goodness. Okay, so now we fast forward like a millennia or two, and we get into the next power that takes in the vacuum of the Darkin being ousted, essentially by Vladimir. Vladimir just ends up like eating all of the Darkin. All right, and he just kind of like he does it so well that a lot of people start trying to copy his way of magic, and that's when we get into like the creation of this cabal of quote unquote vampires. They're really just mages that are using blood magic.
And we need to emphasize, just like we joked about how vile and dark what he's doing is, and Hetch mentioned Mordekaiser before. Mordekaiser is pretty much the only evil being that could compete when it came to this, and they actually hung out like they were buddies. And so even if you're a copycat, it's something where you can copy all you want, but you're not as twisted and dark enough to do what he's doing. So you're always going to hit that wall. And that's what people were seeing. And that only made them more terrified of Vladimir overall. Once you have that realization that you're not blood hungry enough, literally.
And it's also a thing of like the pure factor of time.
Yeah.
Like we're now like almost fast forwarding like 1,000 years. So you've been doing this your whole life. You've been trying to master this magic for like 80 years. Vladimir's been doing it for like 2 millennia at that point. You do not have the experience he has.
I need more time.
But yes, that's the next thing that takes up the Darkin is Mordekaiser.
Yeah.
And Mordekaiser is just a being of basically pure evil.
Yeah.
All right. But this is Mordekaiser within his lifetime. Which that would, if we ever get to a point where we break down Mordekaiser's story, that will be a fun one to break down. Yeah. But Mordekaiser, the spoilers for his story is that he is the building block that all of Noxus is built upon. All right, so we're getting now to the birth of Noxus.
Yeah.
Vladimir, around for millennia at this point, continuing his lifespan by basically taking the life essence of all those around him. Mordekaiser comes into power. Vladimir can't take his life essence. That is how strong and how evil Mordekaiser is. And Vladimir, after doing this for millennia, is just like, no, I'm not down with that.
Yeah.
I don't like that. So these lesser than himself people that are following him, he's like, no, we're going to war with that guy. So we have this giant blood feud happen. tons and tons of death, which means Vladimir and Mordekaiser both just get stronger.
Yep.
It's imagine if like we look at Game of Thrones and we have, the winter is coming and all of like the what do they call him in Game of Thrones? I went to say the Lich King, and that's World
Oh,
of
the White
Warcraft.
Walkers?
The White Walkers.
Okay.
Thank you. So you have the White Walkers, and at the end of a battle, they just raise up all the dead.
Yeah.
All right. So this is basically two warring White Walkers.
Yeah.
And they would fight. Everyone dies. They all come back to life, and they do it again. That's it. It's not exactly happening that way, but that's basically what's happening. Mordekaiser and Vladimir are at a standoff. And to call out an episode that we've recorded before, this standstill is only broken by a mysterious sorceress by the name of LeBlanc.
Hey, listen, we told you Vladimir's story is fucking good.
and we told
everything.
You. And if you haven't listened to our LeBlanc episode, check that one out because LeBlanc's story is awesome.
Yes.
And LeBlanc's story comes into play here because LeBlanc shows up and basically just talks Vladimir and Mordekaiser into just sitting down and talking it out.
Yep.
And that is a really big deal because, again, we have these like two insurmountable forces of power just butting heads, and LeBlanc finally gets them to just hash it out and agree to coexist.
Yeah, this is essentially their like natural disaster level, right? At this point. And the impressive part is this is early LeBlanc. So this is LeBlanc as the essence of what a LeBlanc is, quotation marks, is becoming more established in Noxus lore.
Yes, and this is really where we get the birth not only of Noxus, but we have the birth of a hidden cabal by the name of the Black Rose.
I've heard that somewhere before.
Yeah, I see you've listened to our LeBlanc episode. And so now that we have the birth of the Black Rose, this is the order that helps Vladimir and Mordekaiser just kind of level out and be chill with each other. Mordekaiser heeds the lessons of LeBlanc and decides, I'm going to take more of a backseat. I'm going to chill. I'm going to sit back here. And LeBlanc is like, I too am going to take a backseat. Vladimir's like, nah, bitches. I'm the star of the show.
My name will be on the ballot every year until the end of time.
That's right. Yeah, we have 4 more years of Vladimir coming up, baby.
Make Noxus great again.
Oh, goodness. So Vladimir is like, yeah, no, I'm down with like not killing each other, but I'm going to go and kill people.
Yeah.
And so he now is just using this safe place where no one can touch him anymore to just feed off of all of humanity that comes near. And this goes on for a little bit until Mordekaiser ends up falling. He falls. I would love to get into a Mordekaiser episode, but we gotta spoil bits of his story.
Restrain yourself.
Here. Well, what ends up happening is that a group of tribes end up banding together to overthrow their evil dictator, and the evil dictator does not die. He is sealed. And they decide to use the seal and build on top of it to keep burying evil dictator as much as they can. And that is the birth of the
nation
bastion.
building. Yeah, that's how it works. That's actually the playbook. That's how America was built.
It is 100% how America was built. We were built on Mordecai's
on the corpse of the soul of a natural disaster.
And so this is where we have the building of the Bastion.
Yep.
And the Bastion is the capital, the flagship building of Noxus. The group of tribes that banded together to build the Bastion decided to call themselves a Triferix. And they became the first Triferix in forming of a new nation called Noxus. And now we have the birth of Noxus.
Yeah,
The
essentially
first
new
Triferic.
Noxus. I think we should probably start referring it to that. I think that probably helps just because of how. Maybe
I'm down with that,
yeah.
but
You want to do that?
this is not new Noxus
Oh no,
because
yeah. Okay, this is the original Triferics before.
This is before we get to
Dark Will.
Swain.
Yeah.
And we're still like a few hundred years before that point, but
my apologies. I got ahead of myself.
We have the birth of Bastion.
I'm just too excited, Hetch. All right, this is real good shit.
It's a great storyline. And so now we have the Bastion, we have Noxus. The first Triferics ends up taking a lot of the other tribes and starts forming this Noxian empire. Vladimir is like, well, that's cool. Keep killing all these other tribes and taking them in because I'll keep feeding off of that. And that continues until the birth of new Noxus, because we know from our stories with Draven and Swain and Darius that these were men that were very convicted to the idea of the Noxian Empire, that all men are created equal in this empire as long as they gave all of themselves to the empire. And they believe that the biggest threat to the Noxian Empire is this Black Rose cabal that led their now deposed king to insanity.
Yeah.
So
Born Darkwill.
Swain, Draven, Darius, they're looking for a lot of these cabal guys, and this is what forces Vladimir to become more shadowy. He now has to be like, oh, well, now all these people are hunting me. I've got to chill. And this is what birthed the legend of Vladimir, because now nobody's seen him. It was the guy that was on the ballad for like thousands of years, and he just disappears because now that people are hunting for him, he's like, deuces, I'm out.
And real quick,
and no one can find him.
Yeah, this is the unique turn here, because up to this point now, he's getting to the point where he can't be contained, right? He can't be stopped. The one thing that countered him is gone, right? Mordekaiser's in the ground. And the unique thing here is with most vampire stories, so kind of stepping away from this, when vampires go from generation to generation, they take time away and they try to figure out how to blend back into society, because the one drawback of vampirism is usually there's not more of you than the prey. So the numbers are the problem, right? So it's to work towards your survival. So you blend in and you maintain some kind of dominance, whether it be you become a lawyer, a vampire lawyer, or like a politician or whatever, but you're still a vampire, right? Vladimir has the personality trait where he's a narcissist. He doesn't like to do that. So this is the first time he's forced to do that. And Hetch will get to it. You think he would be like, okay, this is my weakness. I will recognize this and I will stick to this survival plan. Well, turns out when you're a narcissist, survival doesn't really take over all the time.
That's right. And because, I mean, like you said, I want to see like Vladimir as a lawyer just kick the door open into a courtroom, point at the judge, kneel before me, and what?
Objection! Objection!
So again, as a narcissist, instead of being able to reassimilate himself into society, Vladimir is just like, well, if I can't be me, I'm not gonna be me. I'm not gonna do anything. And now we just hit the depression episode of Vladimir's story, because he just, like, out of all of these, what's written here, all the stains of his previous lifetimes, like, Swain is at a point where he's finally getting to understand this legend of a Lord Vladimir and really grasp the idea of who Vladimir is. So now new Noxus is going to war with the last remnants of old Noxus. And Vladimir is now just quietly hiding while drinking in all of the death and destruction that is still happening with the Noxian Empire, because we know from our stories with Demacia, with the Freljord, like, you can basically listen to any of our other episodes. There are so many characters, Ionia, cough cough, Irelia, cough cough. like all these characters, they have something to do with when the Noxus Empire attacks.
Yeah.
So there's still plenty of this negative energy happening for Vladimir to survive, but all he does now is hide and remind himself of his glory days and tell himself that it's fine, I'll get to do it again.
Yeah, I used to be quarterback in my high school. I was great.
I was great. I would have gone pro if it wasn't for my knee.
For my knee injury. Yeah.
But then take that arrow to the knee. Talos.
Yeah, but it's a great way to kind of progress because we're essentially seeing the neutering of Vladimir is still a threat, but he's now at his most neutered state, probably pre-bloodbending, right? Where his influence isn't as powerful as possible. You're starting to have the rise of another cabal under his like lineage, known as like the Crimson Crew, right? We won't get into them this episode, but they're almost playing magic. They're not really practicing because these are all a bunch of rich kids. So it's starting to lose the power it once had, the evil power it once had, and it's become more of this plaything, which also Vladimir does not like.
Yeah, it's Vladimir really got to watch, like, as far as his peons, like he got to watch them rise up to be full-on Bram Stoker Draculas, and then see them fall all the way to the level of the vampires from South Park, where where it's just a bunch of middle school kids that went to Hot Topic drinking clamato juice.
Yeah.
Like he's watched the whole transition. And like there is a point where like he, tries to act like a Noxian aristocrat and just be, I'm a spoiled rich kid too. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
And this is how he gets out of the house. But Swain's on to him. So he can't even do that anymore. Like he's seen the highest of highs, and he is now in the lowest of lows.
Yeah, definitely.
Telling himself that it will get better.
Definitely check out, have you mentioned Swain again? Check out our Swain episode, because Swain goes through something as someone who's very intelligent, very astute, very perceptive. He goes through a near-death experience during a war situation with Ionia that allows him to see darkness a lot clearer. And this is causing a threat to Vlad, and we're at a point where Swain is getting more powerful himself, even though comparatively very young. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes with the Triferics, because you have a bunch of leaders that are also equally powerful in their own right. And then we're going to get to the point where Noxus kind of opens its doors to outward influence. And that's definitely something Vladimir doesn't want, because he wants Noxus to himself. That's the goal, right? That's his play space. It's his playpen. He doesn't want any outwards interference. So there's a lot of threats coming to him that he's never had to deal with, regardless of his power, where almost his power is irrelevant, because the nature of the existence of Noxus is changing, and that's affecting who Vladimir is.
Yeah, and it's a very his story ends in such a complex position. Yep. Like, I think that where Vladimir's story as a biography ends is where you can really dig in the most. And that's also a symptom of the fact that he's just been around for so long that there's no quote-unquote written history of anything before that point. And so his story ends with him being more of a legend than anything else, but he's very real. And speaking of things of his story that's very real, his card, it's very real. I don't think people have seen it since beta, but it's very real. So we'll talk about it real quick, because Vladimir is one of the few champions that's seen a good bit of changes, because Riot has tried to bring it up to speed to see more play, but it's just more of like, when I get into his level up and stuff, it's more of a mechanic that's hard to make work. In the nature of the way that the card game is played. So if you're playing Legends of Runeterra, Vladimir is a 5-mana, 5/5 champion, and he has on the attack, for each attacking ally on my right, deal 1 damage to it and 1 to the enemy Nexus. So when he attacks, if you can order it to where you're choosing essentially each unit of yours that you wish to deal 1 damage to deal an additional 1 damage to the Nexus. So it's straight up face damage. And it plays into his level up condition, because his level up condition is you have had 5 or more allies survive damage. So any instance of 1 damage, as long as that ally has more than 1 HP or tough, they will survive that damage and it will go to Vladimir's level up.
Yeah.
And his level up is really the only reason to play Vladimir, because he's at this point he's one of the more unique level up champions. Because when he levels up, he gets a +1/+1, but he gains regeneration. I think he's the only champion that gains regeneration, because like Trundle and Braum, they just have it.
Yeah.
But Vladimir has to gain it.
Which is cool when after everything we've just told you, because that fits perfectly into the lore, right? Where
yes,
he learns
he didn't start off that way.
Yep.
He was just a normal dude.
Yep.
He just learned a lot of really evil magic. So like lore wise, the flavor of Vladimir's card is chef's kiss. Gameplay, God bless it. So he becomes a 6/6 with regeneration, and now instead of it dealing 1 to your allies to deal 1 to the Nexus, you deal 1 to your allies on the right to drain from the Nexus.
Yep.
The key word of draining in Runeterra means that every point of damage in the drain cost is damage that heals your Nexus. The Grasp of the Undying is probably the most key drain card that anyone from Legends of Runeterra will recognize. So his level up changes his attack effect into draining, which at that point, unless you remove Vladimir, they're just going to bleed you out, because he's constantly going to be healing the damage you deal. So that's really cool. But his is a card that's just not seen a lot anymore, because the level up condition is painful.
Yeah.
Like Runeterra is very much a game of taking even trades while simultaneously being reactive. Vladimir is a card that deals damage to your units, which is going to be hard to keep your units because a lot of things are just 1-for-1 trades. And then 2, he needs excuse me. 2, he also needs the he needs to be proactive.
Yeah.
He cannot be reactive. He needs to attack. He needs to drain off of your units to level himself up. And that's just very counterintuitive to the way that Runeterra is played. You can't sit back and wait. You gotta go. We gotta go, and that's what Vladimir does, and so he's in a very weird spot as far as Runeterra is concerned.
I think you nailed it. Where ever since, regardless of if he's played or not, and this is just something that Runeterra gets really well, is he's been a liked card. People like the flavor, people like the way it's designed, and because of the lore and how well it fits, nobody's too concerned, right? There's plenty of cards to play. So I think they may take another attempt at him down the road. We'll see. Maybe once they release like Mordekaiser and stuff like that, they may go back to the well, pun intended, and we'll see what happens then. But I just want to repeat, because we recently, if you haven't listened to our Zeri episode, we do talk about how that bio is a lot more lackluster compared to the overall quality of most League of Legends stories and lore. And this is a great example of something that, lore that's older than time. Like, this one's been around for a while. And this is the type of stuff that tickles our fancy completely. Luckily, I mean, it has a lot to build off of with the Black Rose and LeBlanc and Mordecai's and all that stuff. But hopefully with Zeri, as we're getting more stuff, we'll get there with her so that we can like her as much. But we've been holding off on Vlad, not just because we like to play around with our Noxus fans, but because this is one of those stories that we really do enjoy.
It's one of those stories that's really hard to condense as well.
Hence the longer episode.
Hence a longer episode. It's very difficult to condense this because there's a lot going on, and it's also very important. Like, we're literally talking about the building of Noxus as a nation, or as we're talking about New Noxus. Like, you can't build a whole nation very quickly. Like, it takes a lot of time. There's a lot of people that are in play, and there's a lot of people that come into play, and so Vladimir's story is very entertaining because he's watching it all happen. He's watching it all happen while being the most narcissistic prick on the planet.
He's like, where can I fit into this puzzle?
Yeah, where do I fit in this puzzle, and how do I end up being the corner piece? I am a corner piece, damn it. And you cannot tell me otherwise.
And with that, we're at the end here. We've dragged on for a good bit. It was worth it. But we will be back soon. So always, thanks for listening. And we'll be back soon with the next episode.
That's right. Take care, everybody.